What's up, family? Thank you for tuning in to the DreamNation podcast. My name is Casanova. I'll be your host, and I'm excited to be bringing to you entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and trailblazers from around the world. Stay locked in with us because we're about to go on a journey that will change your life. All right, great. So we got the one, the only Daxi Perez, the man when it comes to podcasting and finding your voice. So I'm super excited to have you on here today. I know that there's a lot of people that are going to get a ton of value, but before we get into, podcasting and somebody else finding their audience and their voice, I always like to ask, again, I think of us entrepreneurs as like superheroes, right? Which means that we're living our day-to-day lives every single day, but at the same time, we find a problem in our community, and all of a sudden we're like, oh man, we got to try to solve this problem, right? And that's what I like to think of us as. And so what I want to ask you is, before podcasting, before working, getting 50 million views, downloads, before working with some of the biggest entrepreneurs in the online marketing world and space, like, who's Daxi Perez? Who were you before you decided that you were going to be an entrepreneur?
I was no one, or I was someone, but like I was just living the life that, kind of the education system and your family puts you on, where it's not one that you choose. It's not one of empowerment. It's one of just like, this is what you should do. This is who you are. And it wasn't until like the past few years where I've kind of had to break out of that mold. So I was someone who didn't really care about my choices. Like I worked at McDonald's, I would eat McDonald's all day. And my transformation came more on the health side, not the entrepreneur side. And it wasn't until I got my health right that I was able to feel good and actually want to do something with my good feeling. So one thing that I was talking to my buddy recently, and he's 18 years old and he's already made $1 million profit. And this is like a month or two back. And he gave me this, he told me this, and he's super smart for his age. It's insane that someone's like that smart and that young. But when he told me this, it helped me a lot as far as like my vision, because a lot of this has to do with vision. Like a lot of it's your mind. Like your mind controls so much. Like I'm sure you guys have had a time where you had like a bad nightmare or something and you wake up sweating and whatever, sweat, and like nothing happened. It was all just your mind controlling. Like in real life, nothing really happened. So pretty much your past equals your present. So what happened in your past kind of dictates your present. Your present, what you do now, dictates your future. And then your future is dictated by your past. It's like this weird loop that it wasn't until I understood that I knew, like, to be patient and to like work. So I don't know. I've kind of had to change my my thoughts in my past and my limiting beliefs to get where I am. I don't know if that could help people who are listening. Like you really have to kind of think about in your past where you have this data points that make you not be who you want to be or who you are. So it wasn't until I kind of broke out of that, I all those like false beliefs I had about myself, like growing up, that I was able to kind of like move forward and start like feeling comfortable being uncomfortable in a way.
Right. Absolutely. And I remember I went through a lot of that, so I can definitely relate. But I guess what's the number one thing that you started doing that started to help you change your mindset? Was it reading books? Was it, working out more? Was it hanging around different entrepreneurs? Like what was that one thing that led you to be like, oh shit, like I gotta.
So actually, when I feel like when you put yourself in a situation where your back's against the wall, that's where you can really grow. And that one thing I did was I dropped out of college. I was like two credits away from getting my associates, so it was a dumb move, but I knew like it would hurt, and usually pain is kind of what makes me change. So dropping out of college made me force myself to figure out ways to make money. Because I didn't, the career path that was, that the life tells us to go on, the school, college, like that was no longer an option. So learning and buying and experimenting, like that's the biggest thing. I'm a big proponent of experimenting, especially when you're starting out. If you don't know what to do everything, do it for free. Just try things out and build that database. And so buying online courses, I failed a lot. I made a lot of money. Luckily I got into drop shipping when it was early. I don't know if you guys know what drop shipping is, e-commerce. Back then on Facebook, it was super cheap. Cost per, like back when fidget spinners were popping. It was really easy to sell free plus shipping products and make a lot of money. So it wasn't until like 2016, 17 where it became harder and it became more of a chore. And then I wasn't like built for that. I wasn't prepared for that. So I had to shift into like the freelancer community and doing like freelancer work. So I would say buying courses and learning from people who are doing the thing that you want to do is always the best bet. And that's why I kind of dropped out of college. So.
Got it. No, that's dope because I just made a post earlier today. You probably saw it, but I talked about preparing for 2019, right? So you said you weren't prepared for that. And I think that that's something that, we take lightly a lot of the times, right? When we decide we're going to go on a new journey, even if that's just a side hustle, like, did we already really go out and hack the people who are where we want to be? You know what I'm saying? And do we look at what exactly are they doing right now to be successful, and read their blogs, read their emails, read everything that they said that was failures for them, so then we could speed and accelerate up, our growth process. So I think that that's super huge. But yeah, no, I appreciate you going into that. So again, let's jump now into like podcasting. Like you said that you were doing the e-commerce. Like, where did podcasting come in on this?
So ever since I was in high school, so one of my first experiences with the internet was like gaming, which is kind of like not relevant now. Through that, I developed a passion for music, because like when you game, you just like listening to music. So that kind of always like motivate me. Just like music always changed my mindset. So early on, back when I don't know if you guys know who deadmau5 is. He used to stream. Back when there was Ustream, there was no Facebook Live or anything, and he used to stream straight from his studio. And
Okay.
that was like an example of learning from someone who was doing the thing you want to do. Back, like, before our time, you would never get access to learn from someone like that. But here's this
Right.
guy who's the best at what he's doing, streaming from his studio. And through that, I learned how to produce music, just watching him stream, like make music live. And I started doing remix contests, and I got really big into the music scene. And music started to become my big passion. That become my hobby, my go-to. And I became an audiophile, so to speak, where I became all about audio and an audio engineer and learning everything just from YouTube videos. So I always had that interest and passion. It still is, like, that's still one of my big goals,
Yeah.
to like have like a music agency. But through that, when I went into freelancing work, like kind of 3 years ago when I was being a digital nomad, I would always do freelance editing for people, just for extra cash. And it wasn't until I got linked up with the right people through right networking that I got into a big podcast agency, and I learned the stuff that I wasn't good at, which is like the marketing and the branding and the customer onboarding and all that stuff. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into podcasting. I started as an audio engineer and a production manager. And then through being in the world for a few years and seeing some of the top podcasts get built, in like a big agency, I'm not going to say who he is. He doesn't want me to talk about him anymore, but, that's why I learned a lot. So just by standing on the shoulder of a giant, pretty much. So
Got it. Got it.
networking.
So talk to me about, how do you get into that podcasting world? Like, how did you get in with that guy to be able to see these big time
Lucky.
podcasts?
It was
What'd you
like,
say?
it's like this happens and this happens and this happens. So like I got into e-commerce. I became a digital nomad. I started networking with people in Thailand, and then through a buddy and then another buddy and then his friend, he was looking for an audio engineer. We happened to be in Thailand. We linked up, and then it's just like, I guess, luck meets opportunity type of thing.
Right.
Um, so I don't know. Then that's the reason I went out to Thailand too, and I could have stayed home and done e-commerce at home. And I think that's the reason that my e-commerce businesses, I sold them all, because they started to like go down, is because Thailand, being a digital nomad, is hard. Not that it's hard, but it's hard to build a business when you're traveling. I don't think you can build a business while traveling, personally. I think you can sustain a business, but I don't think you can actually like build and like work on a vision when you're always having to get on planes, figuring out where to eat, hanging out with friends, doing cool things. Like, so that's why I was very, it was like, the digital nomads sell the lifestyle, but it really isn't that great if you're trying to build a sustainable business. So I just got lucky that I met the right people through networking. So
Got it. Got it. No, I got you there. So talk to me about then why podcasting though? Because you were an engineer, so I'm sure you were learning a lot of things other than just music. But like, what made you decide to get into just podcasting? Like, what did that look like?
I was just at a point where I was saying yes to everything. And,
Okay.
I don't know. I didn't really, I guess it was the audio aspect of it that I listened to. Like the reason I went to Thailand is because of a podcast. Johnny FD, who became my first mentor, he started a drop shipping program where he was like, all right, guys, I'm taking my 10 most successful students and we're going to start stores together. The only deal is you have to fly to Thailand. And I was like, oh shit, I got to fly to Thailand because he wants me to be part of his partnership.
Right.
But he sold me that lifestyle on his podcast. He still has his podcast up. It's called Travel Like a Boss, and he interviews digital nomads. But I used to listen to his podcast religiously because I would hear all these digital nomads, and I'd learned the power of storytelling by being on the other side of a podcast. It literally made me travel across the world, like he painted this vision in his market through a podcast. So that's kind of why I got into podcasting. I realized the power of it, and I realized that I can do it for people, and that not enough people were doing it. Even now, not enough people are doing it. I think everyone should have one, to be honest, but that's just me talking.
So it's funny that you bring that up, because I think it was either maybe in your Facebook group or a different Facebook group that I was in, someone had said that now podcasting is the new blog.
Yeah, it was me, I think. Yeah. So I got that from someone else. Seth Godin said it on one of his. He said it's the new guest blogging, being a guest, being on people's podcasts, but it could be interpreted the other way around.
Yeah. So do you find that to be true? Obviously, you repurposed it or retweeted it, so you find that to be true. So you said that everybody should have a podcast. I think a lot of the times where people get stuck at is they're like, oh man, well, how long, should my podcast be? Where do I even go about starting it? So for you, when you're finding somebody who's brand new, like me, and they're like, oh man, I should start a podcast. Like, what do you recommend? Do you recommend that they start out small? Do you recommend that they start doing interviews? What does that look like?
It depends where you're at with your business and what your goal is. Some people who already have a big business, I would obviously pay someone to help you start, but the goal and the positioning of your podcast would be different. If you have no audience, just start. Like, don't overthink the launch because you have nothing to launch it to. The whole point of starting a podcast when you have no audience is to just get comfortable with storytelling. So I would build your foundation first. And your foundation is obviously, a lot of this is like expert secrets, like Russell Brunson stuff, but like knowing what niche you're in. All right, what sub niche are you going to go in? What is like, who is your avatar? Really trying to figure out who you want to speak to, who will buy your products, or who you want to buy your products, what industry you like talking to or being in. And then figuring out, like, you really have to develop a good customer avatar and really know who you want to talk to. And then after that, you have to figure out what their desires are. And then once you know their desires, you make content around their desires. So just to give an example, in the real estate world, people's desires are probably, family, cash flow. I'm talking about like life desires too. So cash flow, what else?
They want to get more of their time back.
Get their time back. I'm not a real estate agent, so.
Yeah, so they want to get more of their time back. They want to create extra income. They want to create pass flow, or they want the tax benefits that you get with being an investor. If you're talking about being an agent versus an investor, they're two different things, right? But what you're saying is, again, you got to figure out what are the most common objectives or objections. Sorry. What are the most common objections with whatever industry or product that you're trying to do?
Yeah. So that goes into the storytelling part. But the desire part is figuring out what they actually want, and then creating content that solves that desire, that fulfills that desire. But it has to fulfill every desire. It can't just be money, because if it's just money, that's great. But this person desires way more. So you can be hitting them on a lot of fronts. They might desire the time aspect. They might desire. So you got to hit them on every angle. And then obviously, if you're not comfortable. If you don't want, so like I said, it depends on the business. If you don't want your business to be a personal brand, then you don't have to do solo episodes. You can do just straight interviews. But if you're trying to do a personal brand, you can just make it, if you already have a big audience, you could probably get away with just doing you, if you want to. But obviously the easiest way to grow a podcast is by using other people's audiences. And that's by getting them on your show and then being on other shows as well.
How do you start getting on other people's podcasts? How do you build an audience, and what, I guess, would define a big audience? Like for somebody who's just starting out and they have maybe 1,000 Facebook friends, right? They have no email list. Is that a big audience? Or what do you define as a big audience?
So firstly, it's going to require some research, and you can have a VA do this, or you can do this yourself. So once you really have your customer avatar down and you know who they are and where they hang and who the top influencers in your niche are, you just figure out where they exist on each platform, where they exist on Instagram, on YouTube, on Pinterest, on everywhere, Reddit, Facebook groups. And
right.
You have to create, especially if you're reaching out, you have to make it attractive and appealing to the person that is going to interview you. So what I do is we create a podcast one sheet, which is just a press sheet. And it's pretty much, so when you do reach out to people, you give them this press sheet, you reach out to them, you give them a compliment, be like, hey, I love what you're doing. I love blah, blah, blah. I feel like I could help your audience do blah, blah, blah. Here's information if you want me to be on your show and to provide value to your audience and give this freebie, whatever. And then on your press sheet, you just have a bio about yourself, talking points you can talk about, questions you can ask them, your accomplishments, your achievements. You just sell yourself on a press sheet pretty much. And then you just do that multiple times. iTunes, you can easily figure out, like, go to the category. And then when you actually go to the podcast, it says their website. And you just go to their website and you just go to their contact page and you just email them. Simple as that. People are looking for guests all the time. So yeah, Facebook groups as well. Reach out to Facebook admins, and yeah.
Got it. So you just want to find people that, again, you can add value to their audience. So do you think that it's more valuable to develop your own audience first, and then try to go get, like bigger name people so you can bring them in and add value to them? Or would you say that, hey, I just want to come add value to your audience?
It depends where you're at. So if you're in a position of power where you've gotten results, then you can do that first route where you just go out to people. But if you're a newbie and you're starting out and this is new to you, I would try to get people on your show first. So, just to develop your credibility in your show. And that way it'll be more valuable to your audience too, because they're not going to want to listen to you if you're just a new person, which is a type of attractive character you can have, which is an expert secrets, the different attractive characters. You could be the journalist. You could be the adventure seeker. You don't have to be that person who's like the knowledge. You could be the person who gets the people and congregates that knowledge and builds a community around that. So.
Love it. Love it. So it looks like we got some people on the live with us. What's up, Stanford? What's up, DeMarcus? Appreciate you guys popping in. Definitely appreciate you leaving a comment. The other thing I was going to ask is, okay, so when you're first starting out, right, a lot of the times we're wondering about equipment, like what type of mics do we need? What type of, like, how easy is it for us to start? Because you said everybody should have a podcast. How easy is it for us to start, podcasting or recording our message?
Okay. So, first of all, if we're not like getting into the strategy, which is like creating your brand and brand identity and such, which is a whole different topic, but if it's just like the logistics, get an ATR 2100, get a Blue Yeti, get something that sounds good, because if you don't sound good, then your message won't get across good. And then people won't take you seriously. Like podcasting is like it's like a relationship. Like if someone gets a bad impression of your podcast the first time, they'll never go back to it. So you want to make a good first impression. So make sure your branding is good, like your artwork's good, because that's your advertisement. Make sure you have good episode titles, like things are clickbaity, things like it looks desirable to listen to, you sound good. And then after that, all you need is a hosting platform. So choose Libsyn or Simplecast. I don't use Anchor yet. I mean, I'm watching it, but it's kind of a bit amateurish. What's up, Leslie? We got Leslie on here.
What's up?
And a lot of people overthink, like, oh, I need intros, I need outros. You really don't. You can just talk if you really want to. Like, if that's a struggle for you, then just don't do it. Like, you don't need intros and outros. You just need people to listen. You just need to like create content. Like, consistency is way more important than perfection. So, and you can honestly make intros as well. I have people tell me like, oh, I don't know what to say for my intro. Like, for the longest time on one of our old clients' podcast who were like their top 200, their intro was like, this is the whatever podcast. That's it. Like your intro can just serve as a transition from your episode introduction to your main content. Same thing with your outro. It can just be a small thing you snip together yourself, or you can pay someone on Fiverr. So all the technicalities, like all the excuses, like they're easily overcome. I don't know if anyone has any that they're thinking on the top of their head, but that's usually the main ones. The mic, super easy to get. You can even get a lapel mic if you want. And if you don't have time to record at night, record in your car and just do it on your way to work. And then there's good lapel mics where it'll block out a lot of the noise. And then you just upload it with like an episode title, a description, and then like that's it. Like there's not much else to it. People will get really confused about the technology, but that's only if you're trying to do like mass distribution, which you shouldn't be at the start. You should just be producing content. So.
Got it. Now, when you say producing content for somebody who's just brand new starting out, like how many pieces of content do you think that they should be putting out? Is it one per week? Should you try to get, a 5 to 7 minute, message per day, right? And then try to keep putting them out there on Facebook or something like that. Like, what does that look like? Is it like the longer the better, like a YouTube, or is it like just short and consistent?
So there's a point where if it looks too long, people won't download it, because then they'll feel intimidated by it and they can't listen to the whole thing. So obviously interviews, like I like to say usually 30 to 45 minutes. Sometimes if your audience already knows you, they like and trust you, you can go a little higher. But eventually, like when you get to that audience size, you can poll your audience and you can ask them what they want. Like, hey guys, do you like my 10-minute episodes? Do you like my 20-minute? But usually I like to say 10 to like 15 minutes. I like is a good point for solo episodes. It's not too long and it's not too short where you can't actually like, if people want more, you don't leave them hanging, you know, so to speak. Because people will want to listen to you more. And if you just do 5-minute episodes, then that might not fulfill the desires of the person who wants to hear you for 30 minutes, you know?
Yeah. And that's what I was wondering. Like, because a lot of the people, I think that you struggle with, okay, I'm just starting out. Like, how long do I got to make these? If you're like, oh my God, like I got to talk for 25 minutes, like, what do I say? And that was going to transition into my next question, which was going to be, how do we go about finding content? Because even though we think that we already got, you know, our message or whatever, it can be a struggle to try to keep finding content, to keep showing up, even weekly. So like, how do you go about helping people find their content, or how could just starting out, we at least just develop some type of content for 1, 2, 3 months?
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do with a little research. So seeing what's working out there already. I use a tool called BuzzSumo. So I search by keywords. And then you know this, you're at OfferMind. You really have to understand your audience's false beliefs and their objections. And then you have to address that with your content. And then if you know your audience's false beliefs, like that's a lot of content to create. The way I like to structure it, though, personally, this is what I do and some of my clients. Everyone has their own way of creating content, and people are more natural at it. Especially if you're an expert already, you should be able to just talk about what you do easily. But I usually create a Word document and I'll write 2 to 3 pages. Just type out like the main topics of it and then some stories, because you want to be storytelling for each one of your main points. Like that's the only way you'll keep people listening and engaged and like form new memories in their mind. And really like drive the home, like give people epiphanies when you tell people like, oh, this is the old way that this point was made and this is the new way. You want to like change people's beliefs with it. So have a main podcast topic and then break it down and kind of like leave them hanging the whole way, like create an open loop, and like get into new ideas and new topics. Like start with like one hook and then kind of keep them hanging the whole way. And you can honestly keep the open loop till the next episode if you want to. Like, and then I'll get more into this topic in the next episode, guy. Like, you just want to keep them hooked. Obviously, yeah. So hook and story, and then obviously offer at the end, which is the outro. Hook, story, offer. Hook, story, offer. Like, that should be every episode. So.
Right. So that's incredible value.
The hook is the most important part, because if you can't get people to like want to download your episode from the title and like feel like it has to be curiosity based. And there was an article by BuzzSumo talks about the most clicked hooks. I could pull it up real quick. And I just use this when we develop all of our. You can ask your next question while I look this up, by the way.
Oh, no, it's all good. I thought that was absolutely valuable, right? Because I think that a lot of the times we struggle with how do we structure our content. When you just say go on and talking, that could be something where, like in the mindset, you're even thinking, do people want to hear what I have to say? Right? It's so easy to tell people to publish content, but then I think that in the back of your mind, like we're like, oh my God, am I feeling like that I have the imposter syndrome? Do people really even want to listen to me? Right? If I'm on a live or if I get a podcast and now I'm listening, and all the big guys in my market, you know, they started with, you know, or at least now they're getting, you know, 1 million downloads a month or even 100,000 downloads a month. Whereas I'm stuck with like 25 to 50 downloads a month. Right? Like, how do you?
Here's the thing. And we talk about this with a lot of clients. A lot of it starts with a belief, like the belief that they can actually do it. Before you can achieve something, you have to believe it. And before you can believe it, you got to see it. So you kind of have to like, you know, envision yourself already being this person. So the whole point of like you going through that, you know, getting your first 30 episodes done so you can find your voice is to do it. Even if like have the expectation that no one's going to listen, like that it's going to be 0 listeners. But the thing is, this is a skill that you have to develop. No matter what you do, you have to be good at, especially if you want to be on other podcasts, you have to be good on your podcast, you know? You have to know, like, develop these stories, create your hero's journey, and start practicing that and say the same stories over and over again if you have to. Like, Russell Brunson still says the same stories over and over again. So you have to, like, kind of develop these scripts for yourself. And this content is very evergreen. You know, like, I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Catch Me If You Can, where the guy was, like, a con artist. Yeah, it's awesome. So he, like, I remember there was one job he had. So he was a con artist. He was just doing fake stuff that he had no expertise in. Like, he was just new at everything. And there was like, he was teaching one class in sociology. And when he got caught, they're like, how the hell are you teaching this advanced sociology class? And all he said was, I'm teaching one chapter. I'm reading one chapter ahead of what I'm teaching. So that's all you have to do. You just have to be one step ahead of your audience and kind of like document that. So honestly, it's like podcasting is a journey of discipline of knowing how to like, you know, if you want to research out there and create the content. So there is some pre-thought into it and some research, but this is something that you have to get good at. If you can't get good at storytelling, then I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's just you have to believe it and then do it. So I don't know if that kind of like answers your question, but
yeah, no, it definitely answers it, right? And the biggest thing is that belief, right? Because that's no matter what it is that you're doing. If you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel, or last night I was just talking to a good friend of mine, and she's thinking about starting a blog, right? And she's good with her words. She's good, you know, with the camera in front of her and everything. And I was like, you should start up a podcast or a YouTube channel. But she was like, will people ever even come and watch, or will people listen? So it is that belief. And I think that everybody who hops on here and watches this, we all have a little bit of that belief because we don't have these podcasts yet. Right. And then all of a sudden, when you've gotten there and you even have 1 million downloads a month, other people that are just starting out where you started, it's kind of the same thing, right? Where they're like, they have those same beliefs that you had up front, but you chose to take action on it.
I mean, imposter syndrome is real. Like I even read an article recently that Michelle Obama said she still feels it. And this is someone, it's just perspective. And you have to, one of the biggest keys with podcasting is longevity. You have to know, like, this is, if you're in it for the short term, where you just want to like try it out, then don't do it. Like you have to know that this is like a long-term thing.
Right.
And it's a long-term brand play, but it's like planting seeds, man. It only reaps when you water it daily. So.
Got it. No, I love it. So let's talk about, again, like once somebody, they decide that they're going to start their own podcast, it's all going well, you know, they're showing up daily, but now they really want to go out there and they want to get bigger clients, right? Or they want to do, let's talk about the joint venture world in podcasting, right? So you want to really collaborate. You want to find what's called like your Dream 100, right? You want to get some big name people on there. Like, what does that look like for somebody? How do they get to that point? For even a Gary Vee or a Tim Ferriss or somebody like that, when you're really dreaming big, like, how do you approach people like that to be like, hey, I want you to be on my podcast? Is it as easy as their website?
It depends, man. Like, some of those names you threw out there were pretty big. Like I can't even reach out to them if I want to. Maybe I could if I really want to, but it's, so the point of a Dream 100 is so you work up the list, and as you start getting more names, it starts to be easier to get other names. At first, like, you know, as you start getting bigger people, like, especially when you end an interview and you have that relationship, make sure you follow up with them a week later, follow up with them a month later, keep that relationship going, and ask them, you know, hey, is there anyone else in your network that you think I can get in the show? Because usually word of mouth introductions and email introductions are the best introductions. So that's an easy way to like kind of keep growing. I don't know if you read The Art of a War, like the book.
I haven't. I know what you're talking about, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, so it's just like one of the best strategies in war is to flank people, you know? So like try to figure out, if you can't get directly to the person, figure out who are the people that are close to him, and then how can you get close to them? And then kind of like, you know, get into their world that way. I've done that with a lot of people you probably know that I know. That's how I got into their world. It's like by, you know, kind of chipping away at the people around their circle. They keep hearing my name, and then eventually they're like, oh, this guy. Like, a lot of people, strategically, I've been interviewing people in ClickFunnels on my Facebook group constantly, like every day of the week. I did like 2 months ago, I was doing every day of the week the biggest people in ClickFunnels, because I knew their audience, there would be overlap in audiences, so they would keep seeing my face.
Right.
So I built authority in the space, like people who know me that were big, like people who know me that are like, I just had a message from someone who's a 2 Comma Club award winner. 2 people today, 2 Comma Club award winners asked me if they could be interviewed by me, and I had no idea who they were, but they knew who I was. I don't have a 2 Comma Club, but there's like overlap. So there's overlap. So there's ways to dominate. You just got to stay in your industry first and kind of try to dominate your market. And then like over time, like just through reaching out, you'll get the big names easily, especially when you have the numbers and such. They'll say yes like that. So.
Got it. Now let's talk about if somebody's not in the online world and they're in the offline world. But one strategy that I've been hearing is like reaching out to, or even working for companies like Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, right? And helping them to start a podcast about that company, right? So let's say it's Johnson and Johnson, right? Talking about their products, talking about their customer service, talking about all those things. So if right now you're not in the entrepreneur space and you do love your 9 to 5, like what's another way that you could either help or, go to your boss or go to the executive leadership and be like, hey, we should start a podcast. Like, what do you recommend for something like that? How do you
It's
get that
interesting
out?
you say that because right now our agency, our target is entrepreneurs who are digital, who are like mainly online marketers who have sales funnels and who have audiences to market to. In 6 to 12 months, our goal is B2B, like big companies, because it depends what the company does, first of all, what their budget is as far as for publicity and for branding. But the angles can be very different. You can either, if they know who their clients are, their strategy can be, if you want your business or a company to actually start a podcast, position the benefit of it. Like, hey, we can get you in networking relationships or talking to your ideal clients through a podcast or something. We can highlight your customer case studies, or we can do educational programs through your podcast. It depends what the company is and what their target is. But there's the thing is, like, people connect to stories, like I told you earlier, and that's one of the best places to storytell right now. It's not
Right.
through your company blog post. People are doing a whack job on Instagram and Facebook for their company,
Right.
because they're all short form. So this is how you can position it, as well as that this is how you stand out from your XYZ competition, having a podcast and controlling the media, controlling the conversation in your
Right.
space. So.
Got it. No, I love it. I love it. And that's just another strategy for people, because a lot of people, they're wondering, they're saying like, hey, I don't already know. I guess we're kind of transitioning it a little bit, but people are saying like, I don't know what my voice is, right? But then there's a company already out there with a product, with a service, or with a message. And it's saying like, okay, how can I help them? So for somebody who's looking to maybe become an audio engineer or becoming, the orchestrator or something like that, it could help them to transition to say, hey, there's still a world in podcasting that you can dive into as well.
Yeah, it's a whole huge market right now. It's really big to obviously it requires a little bit of skill as far as knowing the branding aspect of it, which is what I had to learn. So that, and like the market research, and it took me years to learn, to be honest, a lot of what I know, but start small, get clients on, do certain services at a time. At first I just did audio services. Like, hey, I'll just edit your podcast. I'm not going to do everything else. And then I was like, hey, I can also write your show notes. Oh, hey, I can also do your blog post. Hey, I can also do, and eventually I started upgrading. So just start with one thing first, and then as time goes on, develop systems and processes, and that's how you scale.
Got it. Now, what would you say for somebody that's looking to submerge themselves into the podcasting world? Like, what type of resources, what type of Facebook groups are you a part of that you really like, that somebody else can learn more about podcasting and connect with people like you?
Well, my Facebook group, obviously, podcasting for influencers. I know the owner of a Facebook group, Podcast Movement. They're doing an event that happens. I haven't been to it. He literally lives down the street from me. I didn't know. They're like the biggest Facebook group, so I'm probably gonna meet up with him soon. They do like in Orlando. Honestly, it's weird, dude. Like, I learned everything from actually working in the agency world. I didn't really like take any courses or anything. I learned from clients, like from working with people and then seeing data, seeing results, and then seeing things from zero to hero, sort of. So it's hard for me to answer that. Like, I'm sure Google's great. Like, I'm sure if you have any questions, like Google
Right.
can answer Google's great for anything. But it's weird. The podcast, and I've listened. I know a lot of the people who are teaching the podcast world, and I listen to them just because I want to know what people are talking about. And it's weird. Their advice is not the best most of the time. They're very like radio centric. Like, they don't know how to the offer creation side, or they don't know how to market. Like, a lot of people teach you at podcasting, they don't understand marketing, which is like the scripting and the sales and all that stuff, and how to actually create a value ladder and how to actually create a business from a podcast. A lot of people teach you how to create a big podcast. They don't teach you everything that happens afterwards. Like, how do
Right.
you use that? Like, some of the people we worked with, their podcast is the main source of traffic for their business. A lot of people we've worked with. But that's only because they have the right business in place. A lot of people have big podcasts, but they're not generating money off of it because they don't know how to like create the right business model from the type of audience they have. So I would like to say that I'm kind of creating that blend, that kind of blue ocean where it's not just the tech and the strategy, but it's also, all right, how can you like leverage this thing that you have? So that's where kind of I feel like I'm creating my thing where I'm pulling from this people and these people and bringing it together. So I guess my Facebook group, but there's also some cool people out there. Pat Flynn sometimes says good stuff.
Got it. So let's talk about the monetizing. You brought that up, right? So people always look, okay, if I'm going to start a podcast, a lot of people say there's a lot of money in podcasting, right? At what point should you start looking to monetize your podcast? Because you've seen out there where people say, should you monetize when you start off? Should you go find a sponsorship? Or do you think that you should find your message, do your first 30 episodes, keep building, and then obviously as you get bigger names are going to come to you? Or like, how do you find monetization from podcasting?
You can monetize whenever. It just depends where you're at and like where your business, what's your business model? What's your niche? Obviously, if you don't already have, if you're not like dominant on any other platforms and you don't already have that data and you haven't already tested the market and things are working and podcasting is your first go at building an audience, just build that audience first. Like, don't try to monetize. Just try to get them. The only call to actions you should have is try to get them to follow you in other locations where you can market more. So like a Facebook group or Instagram or on your email list or something. Don't try to sell them anything in the start. Just be value. But if you have something that's good, like it's your obligation to try to sell them if you know it can improve your life. If you actually believe in what you sell, it's your obligation to sell it. Obviously, the type of call to actions you do on a podcast are kind of different, and you experiment with it. Do multiple. Don't always do the same call to action. But like, yeah, it's really dependent on what your podcast is about, who your audience is, what their demographic is, what you're selling. Like, are you a coach? Are you selling an info product? Are you selling a physical product? So there's many angles you can go. Sponsorships, people really think sponsorships is where you make a lot of money, but I've seen it behind the scenes. It's really not. And if the people who do
make a lot of money in podcasting,
the people who do make money with sponsorships, like that's not even where you make money with your own stuff. Like, it's just straight profit. I mean, it's your own, you become your own sponsor. Like, why the reason people buy sponsorships is because they're potentially making more money than they're paying for it. So you make money selling your own things, especially info products. Like, you can easily drive people to webinars from your podcast. Once you have a high ticket service, you can easily book strategy calls for your agency or for your coaching thing from a podcast. And then that could lead to a high ticket service, So there's a lot of ways to make money with podcasting. Yeah. It's just like, but I mean, here's the thing. You have to understand this concept too. And Gary Vee talks about it. Like, the currency of now is attention. Like, if you can have attention, then you can do a lot with that. You can direct them certain ways. If you can't direct them, that's your fault. But like, there's really hard to get attention on all these other platforms. I'm sure like even me or you, like it's hard to get attention on Facebook. The algorithm, you don't know what the hell it's doing. I don't know what it's doing sometimes. Sometimes I got to play with it. Sometimes I got to like my own stuff. So it's like weird. I don't know. Leslie says you don't recommend it depends. If it's congruent with your brand, it's actually like something that you would actually recommend and use, then you can do it. It's just how you do it as well, how you position the sponsor in your podcast. If it feels like there's a sponsor coming up in your podcast and it's not, I don't like that. It has to feel like natural. So a lot of people do it good ways. So yeah, there's an art to it pretty much.
Got it. Now let's talk about, when you first start out your podcast, like, should you have a website? Should you have a blog? Like, how do you let people know about it? Right? Like, what do I do? Do I just get an email list, or what would you?
So it depends where you have an audience already. So if you have a chatbot list, do chatbot. If you have an email list, do email list. Everyone's different as far as where people are getting the most attention and engagement. So obviously, if all your fans are on Instagram, spend more time marketing on Instagram. Obviously you definitely want to have a website, because you want to create SEO from this. And if you're going to be interviewing people, you want to have your guest especially when you tell them. So we have templated emails we send out to our guests that helps them share our podcast. So it gives them like 15 links. Like, hey, here's a link to share it. Like it's pre-done for them, so they don't have to think about it. Because if you tell people to promote your podcast and they have to think about it, like they're not going to want to do it.
Right.
So it's just here's a link to share on Pinterest, on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on wherever, and it's all pre-done for them. But you want them driving traffic to your website mainly, because you can get data as far as for your Facebook pixel, for your Google Analytics. They can also probably look like, depending on how your website's set up, you should have like some opt-ins or some resources or about you. And you don't want to send people to a podcast app, because those are third party, so you're not getting data. And also, if you're sending people, like if you're like, oh, send people to iTunes, not everyone uses iTunes. Like some people have Android or something. So send them to the podcast, and then on the page, give them options, like have attractive subscribe buttons, like subscribe on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube. You can do this through third party, like embedded players as well, where it gives them all the options. And in the show notes, everyone writes the show notes the same, which I freaking hate. Like it's so like, it's not generic. I mean, it is generic. So I just follow the script, like who, what, why. So like who's in the podcast. Obviously if it's you, you don't have to do that. And then just say what it's about, give them a hook, and then give them a why. The whole point of the show notes is to get them to listen to the podcast. It's not to like, reveal or like tease. It's just a tease, and then have
you don't recommend like transcribing, because some people
transcribing 100%.
Got it. Okay. You're just saying
that's usually like at the end.
Got it.
You don't want to just have them start reading your podcast. Like after they go through your links and your call to actions, then have the transcriptions.
Got it.
You don't want to have your call to actions and stuff and when I say call to actions in text, I mean like follow me on Instagram, download my free guide. Here's my Facebook group, like stuff like that. Put it before they start reading the transcript.
Got it.
Otherwise they won't see it.
Yeah, so. No, I love that. That makes sense. And then, so do you recommend that you have a website separate from, like, if you have a personal brand, right? Do you recommend that you have it on your personal brand website that says like podcast? Or if you're talking about real estate, like I create a whole nother website with that domain for like the real estate podcast?
It depends your long-term vision and goal. If it's linked to your personal brand and if you know it's going to be long-term, then you can do it. If you want to make a site just for the podcast, you can do it. But I usually recommend to have one site just to build like authority domain or domain authority. But if it's eventually something you don't want to be tied to your personal brand because you feel like it can go a different way, or your personal brand's going this way and you want to confuse people. So there is some thought involved there. But like I said, it depends what niche you're in and if it's congruent with what your personal brand is. So.
Well, first I'll kick it off the thank you train and say thank you. But for somebody else that wants to get a hold of you, like where can they find you at? You mentioned your Facebook. Go ahead and mention it again. Or
yeah. Right now, the easiest way, I don't know if it'll be like this forever, because I've been getting a lot of messages lately. So it's kind of like I've been trying to set up a fence around social media. But Facebook, just direct message me, Daxi Perez. My Facebook group, Podcasting for Influencers, Personal Brands, and Entrepreneurs. That right now, that's where I'm going to have a podcast up.
Value in that group all the time.
Yeah. And there's going to be way more coming up. I'm going to be launching a podcast soon in the next few weeks. So that should be exciting. I'll have to get you on there, dude. So that's a must. Yeah. So
man, it's going to be a lot of fun. 2019 is going to be big, right? And so
I was doing my 2019 vision board this morning, or like for the past week. And I like to get a head start on things, and I have some like awesome goals for next year. So usually what I used to do is, with vision boards and stuff, you try to visualize the end result, or what you want. You want that car, you want that house, you want that whatever. That never worked for me. I never knew why, because I'm like, oh, Tony Robbins has to do this. Why is it not working? Blah, blah, blah. And then he told me, like, dude, you can't visualize. And I've been practicing this a lot, and it's helped me so much. You have to visualize action, not results. So like visualize like the hardest things, like put yourself in your mind doing it. But going through the struggle in your mind, so that when it does come up to the time you do it, you're like, oh, I already went through this. Like, this is just another, because like I said before, your brain believes everything. I don't know if you heard of that study where they had like the basketball shooters who shot free throws, and they had 3 groups of people. And they were all like one group, I forget how long the study was. they didn't practice any free throws. They're trying to improve their free throws. Another group, they practiced for however long every day shooting free throws. Another group just visualized them making free throws every day. Like they weren't actually doing it. And so the one who they weren't practicing, they didn't improve at all. The people who were practicing, they improved 24%. But the people who just visualized it, them doing it in their head, they improved 23%. So like you just have to visualize things. And this is what he was telling me, like, this is the stuff that the 7-8 figure earners, they don't tell you that's the most important. Because if you can't like visualize yourself doing the hard things before you actually do it, and I'm talking about like 50% of your time should be visualizing something before you do it.
Right.
So that you can get over the mental hurdle in your head. So that when the game time happens, like the preparation happens in practice, like they say. So that's been super powerful for me. I don't know if anyone heard that, but if you did, drop it below. Cause that's like, I've been doing that lately and it's like helped me get over shit that I never thought I was good at. That I had limiting beliefs in my head. I'm like, oh, I can't write emails, or, oh, I can't do this. And then I actually like went through it in my head, like sat with it and sat with the pain and like figured out how to get over it. And then when it came time, it felt natural. So.
Oh, I love it, man. I love it. I absolutely love it. Visualization is super huge, right?
Yeah, visualize action. Yeah.
That belief. You got to have the dream and you got to take action. Otherwise, it's just merely a fantasy.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. They say like vision without execution is hallucination.
Nice. It's that preparation, right? That's what we were talking about, the preparation.
100%.
Well, yeah, man, what Ty Robinson said, amazing content, needed it. Absolutely love it, man. I'm sure more people, if you guys are checking it on the replay, go ahead and hashtag replay and reach out to Daxie as well. I mean, he's got a ton of knowledge that he can drop on you. So if you're, question, comment, whatever, you didn't want to post it, live, but you want to just reach out to him. He is a part of this group. And at the same time, you could go to his group or you could just direct message him on Facebook or catch him on Instagram on there as well. So thanks again, man. I appreciate your time tonight, and we'll definitely be catching up soon, my guy.
Yeah, thanks, man. Your followers, I'm lucky to have you, bro. You're a freaking rock star.
As always, if you've gotten anything out of this episode, reach out to me. Let me know. Facebook, Instagram. I'm always on Instagram. Or leave me a review, especially if you have iTunes. I would love to get a review. I would love to hear your feedback. It'll keep me knowing that I am giving value out and that you love these episodes so I can keep bringing more and more and more. My goal is to just serve each and every one of you all. I know that there's questions. I know that there's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of worry. But at the same time, we're dreamers. And what that means is there's a lot of excitement. And as long as we can take some action with some tactical tips, I know that means that we can turn our dreams into reality. And that's all I'm trying to do. So I'll see you on the next episode. I appreciate you listening again. And as always, remember, in the dream we trust.